It's great to see so many people here today. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Daniel Buerta. I'm a colleague of Benedetta's at eClay Europe. I coordinated the policy brief writing process for EC Squared, so I'm going to be giving a bit of background information today, a bit of an overview. So for starters, a little bit about the project itself. The project looks at the social, economic, and legal conditions needed to shift our energy model from a centralized to a decentralized one. And basically the end goal here is to shift from sort of passive energy consumers to more engaged citizens. And exactly like the project itself has studied legal, economic, and psychological barriers and drivers, and our recommendations are centered on those three fields. Next slide. So for the project, we've developed 6 policy briefs. They are all available on the EC Squared website. I think, Laura, maybe you could put a link in there for everyone. And they're all available in English, and we're starting the process of translating them into the other project languages. So far, Policy Brief 5, which focuses on the local level, the one that we're discussing mainly today, is also available in Italian, Polish, and Spanish. And if you subscribe to our newsletter, we should be doing further translations in the future. These policy briefs typically focus on a particular level of government. So from the European level all the way down to the local level, each policy brief focusing on one. Today, we'll be looking more at the local and regional level. Next slide. I can quickly show you a rough overview of what the policy briefs look like. So from the title, it's normally clear which level we're focusing on. Then we have a sort of few high-level key conclusions. Next slide. Then each brief goes back, does a deep dive, bit of background information, a list of core challenges for that level. And then finally, more in-depth, if you go next slide. Next slide, has it? Yeah, there we go. Oh, no, just go back one. Sorry, I think it was freezing a little bit. Yeah, exactly. A list of recommendations that ideally respond directly to those challenges for the level. Next slide. Yeah, so first of all, this concept of energy citizenship, the EC and EC Squared. What is it? This is the focus of our first policy brief. So there's a lot more information about what it is and why it's actually an interesting and groundbreaking concept. So we define it as people's rights to and responsibilities for a just and sustainable energy transition. As we discuss in this first policy brief, the concept, it stems from EU level and the EU law. But the idea is that rights and duties should also be shaped by sort of content from the other levels of government, so from local all the way through to national level. And the idea is that energy citizenship is not a binary yes/no, but rather basically the more rights and duties are given effect to for particular people in particular contexts, the stronger we can say their energy citizenship is. Next slide. Yeah, so why is energy citizenship actually important? So basically, there's been a recognition from the EU that the ongoing energy transition will require a significant role for citizens. This has really been partly recognized with the addition of a whole new host of actors in EU law. So that's mostly citizen energy communities and renewable energy communities. And then in theory, there are a whole host of new rights that we as the public have in terms of participation, production, access, so basically more active involvement in the energy space. Basically, the problem that we've identified in the project and that we seek to address is that these new actors and rights still exist within a wider regulatory and economic framework which is sort of a more traditional neoliberal economic model that is centered on this sort of top-down state producer and the public as just consumers. And basically, we need to restructure the entire system in a way that provides more agency to the majority of citizens, and that more particularly takes concrete steps to support citizen involvement through more enabling policies, so providing the public with resources to actively participate, and then especially addressing issues of exclusion and inequality, which are very sort of rife in this space. Next slide. So the question there is, what is the role of local and regional governments, the focus today? The EU is making these laws. The national level is transposing them, so adapting them for their context. At first glance, you would think that it wouldn't really be so relevant for the more local levels. But basically what we've seen is that some of the major challenges are about a lack of information for the public. There's the fact that in many countries, like here in Germany, there are federal systems, so you might have rules that apply even at the subnational level. And basically all of this leaves a lot of people who are interested in being more actively involved feeling sort of overwhelmed and isolated. So there's a need for these actors that provide a more linking role to other participants, actors, and funding opportunities in a particular area. And we see the local and regional governments as a prime source of information, but also, yes, providing the sort of networking role. In terms of the recommendations that we have, I'm not going to have time to go in detail here. It's all in this policy brief 5, but it's just a lot more about providing one-stop shops, one place, whether physical or online, where people can go in and get information about all sorts of opportunities in their particular context and area. We want to see more active involvement of municipalities in energy communities, so actually as participants. Then there's a big problem with access to spaces for energy production. And we think that municipalities can provide, they have access to a lot of public buildings and land, etc. And then also a problem with energy communities having similar use profiles. So typically, we use energy in the morning and in the evenings before we go to work. And there's this idea that that municipalities can provide sort of links to schools and public swimming pools, etc., and these spaces where people might, be at other times of the day needing energy. Next slide. Yes, so with all that having been said, let me quickly hand you over to our panel. I'm very pleased to welcome Arthur Hinch is our moderator. He's my colleague at the ECLE Sustainable Energy Systems team. He's a senior expert on the topic. Then we have a nice balance of panelists. So we've got Jusep Verma. He's from Energia Uhistu, which is an Estonian energy community. So talking a little bit about practical experience on the ground. Then we have Roland Matus, which is a sort of halfway point. On the one hand, it's a renewable energy community network based in the state of Lower Austria. They receive support from the government, and they in turn are meant to provide support to energy communities and further the state's goals of expanding energy communities. So they have 3,800 members and over 130 energy communities. They can speak for a whole collective. And then finally, we have Patrick Morelli, who is based at the Sapienza University of Rome. But he is also involved in the Sun for All project and works very closely with the municipality of Rome. So the idea is that he can speak a little bit more to the, what municipalities and their take on these recommendations. Over to you, Arthur, and panelists.
Thanks a lot, Daniel, and hello also, and welcome from my side. Well, I don't need to introduce myself. Daniel already did that. I also don't need to introduce the panelists, which Daniel also already did. Thanks a lot for that. So indeed, looking forward to a hopefully rewarding and very insightful discussion on energy citizenship, a discussion around the role of citizens, a discussion around the role of local governments in promoting energy citizenship. As Danny has mentioned, we've got a quite nice panel, I think, in terms of diversity. So service providers, energy community, and the municipal point of view. So without further ado, let me jump straight in. We have around 40 minutes for this discussion. This will be followed by a Q&A with the audience. I would, looking at my esteemed panelists here, I would start with a quick introductory question to each of you. I would ask you to get back to us in a relatively concise manner, so we can go through all three of you, and then we will have a bit of a flexible discussion. Let's see how it goes. I'm sure it's going to be great. The remaining 10 minutes are reserved for Q&A with the audience. So I would encourage everyone in the audience to indeed let us know your questions. I suggest the easiest to do that is via the chat. We will take them up then towards the end of the panel discussion. And yeah, please do let us know. So let's jump straight into it. Indeed, Josep, I'm going to start with a quick question to you. So coming from the energy cooperative in Estonia, of course, you have a lot of hands-on experience with energy citizenship. You have a lot of hands-on experience with involving citizens in the energy system through energy cooperative. Now, of course, energy citizenship is a very strong concept. It's a very attractive concept. But would you like to elaborate a little bit on, in reality, how do you go about getting members? Who is part of your energy cooperative? Yeah, how do you basically make sure that you reach a broad audience of potential members? So to whom is your energy cooperative actually attractive? Please do let us know.
All right, thank you for the question. Hi to all of you. So I will do a quick rewind. So we are an energy cooperative, but our main mission is to help create other energy cooperatives in Estonia. So we're the first one, and we are kind of the umbrella. We have around 100 members at the moment, and we have one actual project done. But in Estonia, it's compared to the Western Europe, it's really, I would say, about 10 years at least behind the whole concept. And people are still warming up to the fact, and also lawmakers are warming up to the fact. So we are working on kind of three sectors. First is getting locals on board, warming up the idea, then trying to modify the law that it would be more attractive for energy community members to start these initiatives. And then third, we are including different renewable energy developers, so that they would join the mix and help fast track it from the legislative part, and also offer some opportunities to local communities. I don't know if this answered your question. I can elaborate more, but I think we can go back to it.
Yes, thanks a lot. Maybe just a quick follow-up here is indeed, what would you say is the most important motivating factor for members of your cooperative to join your cooperative in the first place?
In the first place, funny enough, it was investments. So people are, in Estonia at least, everyone's looking for investments and trying to invest in energy projects and energy cooperatives and stuff like that. But actually what I see for the locals and what the energy cooperative actually should be about is local development. So rural regions, and we can, I think in maybe 5 years' time, we can offer investments based on local development projects. But we need to address the actual problem that rural communities are facing.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. A very clear message here. Let me then take the opportunity now to switch to Roland. Very good to have you here. Of course, you are in a sense, a service provider, right, for renewable energy communities. Now, the situation in Austria is quite nice, I would say, from a regulatory perspective compared to many other member states at the moment, specifically when it comes to facilitating more kind of complex business models, energy sharing. Now, of course, we a lot of us know that, you know, with an increase in the complexity of business models around energy communities, well, the complexity increases, right? It becomes more difficult to get many people on board and to explain to people how all of this works. And sometimes you need a kind of strong guidance on how to actually implement this. Now, could you just kind of share with us your thoughts on, given all this complexity, what is the role of an organization such as yours to develop renewable energy communities together with citizens, in your case, Lower Austria?
Yeah, maybe I have to go a little bit back to history. So the whole idea of having a kind of support structure for energy communities started back in 2020, when there were the plans to have a kind of new law on empowering renewable energy sources in Austria. And there also the idea of having energy communities in Austria was established by transposing the European legislation to national legislation. And then there was the idea to having a kind of support infrastructure for the this new type of market role. So we have one agency which is state financed, who is working on the state level, supporting energy communities. They provide also model contracts. They provide information material to citizens and to energy communities. And then we have several initiatives on the more local level. So, for example, by the region of Lower Austria. What we saw was that you have on the one hand all the technicalities behind their energy communities. They are quite difficult to explain to the average citizen. On the other side, you have also some legal aspects of the energy communities. And you have always to find the balance between to explain everything quite simple so that everybody can understand it. And on the other side, to be precise enough that it's still correct from the legal and from the technical perspective. When it comes to a kind of onboarding of citizens, we developed a kind of platform where people can register if they're interested in participating in an energy community. So they are then provided with the necessary information material. There are also some kind of workshops organized by the state agency for energy communities and also by the initiatives on local level.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I do have an immediate kind of follow-up question, I suppose. With a general kind of increase in this complexity, and that is kind of being, you are supporting citizens, energy communities through this process. I mean, there does seem to be partially a little bit of a shift from energy communities as being primarily kind of a bottom-up grassroots concept, which is their ultimate kind of original aim, and a certain need for professionalization, or a certain need of expertise. So if I understand you correctly, you are trying to bridge that gap, right?
Exactly.
Could you elaborate a little bit on how you're doing that while at the same time, you know, promoting the professionalization, you know, providing that expertise, while at the same time still making sure that people feel that ownership and feel that local dimension of energy communities?
Yeah, in principle, setting up an energy community should be very simple. But on the other side, you have some legal aspects, you have some taxation aspects as well. And therefore, we provide the people who would like to establish such an energy community with all the necessary documents, also with very simple tools to kind of simulate the energy community in advance to see whether it's from a technical perspective feasible and if it really makes sense or not. It was quite a long work or a long way to come to this point, because also the legal framework was not totally clear in the beginning. So we had the law, okay, but several taxational aspects were not clear, some technical aspects were not clear, and so we had to adapt over the last 2 years to all these things that came up.
Thanks a lot. And of course, the adapting process of things that come up is a dominant narrative around all European states with regard to energy communities. The kind of regulatory environment for enabling them is changing drastically. We just heard from Joseph, of course, they're also waiting for certain elements to still be implemented. And I think that's also part of the challenge, in terms of communicating energy communities to citizens, is that on one hand, you want to communicate all that complexity, make it simple. At the same time, you have to explain that basically the law is not always transposed and it's not fully there. So that's why I think, at least in Austria, of course, your energy sharing laws is already relatively advanced. That's really interesting, and it's starting to advance a little bit more in different member states. So thanks very much for those insights. We'll come back to you in a second. Yeah, so Patrick, as Roland has already mentioned a little bit around the attractiveness of providing platforms, to allow potential energy citizens to find each other, to come together in energy communities. Now, that does make me think a little bit of what you're involved in the city of Rome as part of the project of Sun for You under the Eco Action Fund, but also within the Sun for All project. And so basically the idea that in the city, we need to provide the right kind of platforms and tools to ensure that people actually want to set up an energy community in the first place. Now, since we have you here to kind of share with us the insights from the local level, a direct question to you is, how active do you think the local government should be in promoting renewable energy communities? What exactly should be the role of the local government?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Arthur, for your question. Well, I go directly to an answer. As you said, we have actually two different projects in Rome. One older one, Sun for All, almost finished, based on the inclusion of vulnerable families, vulnerable households in the energy transition, and in particular to develop a renewable energy community. This is very challenging. And the second one you mentioned, this ongoing Sun for You, to develop a platform to make, let's say briefly, the renewable energy community more accessible to everyone, more easy. But then these are tools, or let's say projects. But the municipality, I think we can play a very important role, above all when there is a lack of capacity of investment, because we do not have to forget that basically, to share a PV plant, a photovoltaic plant, we have to build it, to build a PV plant, to pay a PV plant, and vulnerable families are basically excluded also after training, after knowledge sharing, after any kind of action to engage them. There will be this specific problem regarding the cost and the finance. That's why the discussion, and I think it's going to be quite successful with the municipality, is to build some models where the municipal districts, in the case of Rome, because in Rome we have 15 local districts that are, let's say, quite large in terms of population, has to support directly and financially the enabling of a renewable energy community that we call for solidarity. That is not a speculative model of an energy community, but it is to include vulnerable households. This can be in different, let's say, with different approach. The municipality of Rome owns almost 1,200 buildings, so it could be in a very easy way the concession of these roofs. In some other case, it will be the concession of the roofs and also the equipment of the roofs with the PV plant. That will be a cost for the municipality. In some case, this cost could also be let's say covered by the self-consumption that is just under this roof, and the exceedance of the energy could be given to the renewable energy community, will grant a 20-year incentives. These would be the benefit to share with the community, also, of course, with the vulnerable households. But I would like just to mention this case, but actually the discussion is much more wider, because we can have different models with different players, with different stakeholders. Let's think also to grassroots local association. Let's talk also on the other side to energy service company that can participate to this process in a, let's say, win-win approach. I think this is the most challenging aspect of the renewable energy community. But I will stop here just to because it could be a very long discussion about it.
Thanks a lot, Patrick. And you mentioned quite a few very clear points that I'd just like to underline. And I'll touch on the issue of the investment and the solidarity in a second, but you also mentioned at the end that potentially the involvement of a broad range of stakeholders. I think this is also one of the challenges, and I think one of the key things that a lot of people think about now is how do you mainstream this concept, while at the same time still safeguarding this very much kind of grassroots character as it was originally intended. And I think how do you then allow for a broad participation of a broad range of stakeholders within the concept? I think that's going to be very, very interesting going forward. Actually, I would like to link briefly back to Josep based on what Patrick just said regarding the investments and kind of the solidarity. Josep, you said that in your case, the investments are kind of a key motivating factor where people would like to invest, of course, or be part of a cooperative. It's a part, of course, of the narrative of an energy community that people can invest. It provides a relatively stable and relatively risk low opportunity for people to kind of invest their savings. Of course, you need to have the money to make the investment in the first place. This is the reality of the other side of the energy communities as well. In general, kind of, and this was seen in project like EC Square and other projects. I suppose there is differences in terms of who is part of energy communities. Patrick just mentioned more kind of the energy poverty element, the solidarity element, where you're trying to get to lower the energy costs of people who struggle to pay the energy bills, to try to mitigate energy poverty. How is it in your case, understanding that not everybody has the capital to invest into an energy cooperative and to reap the financial dividends and returns as a result? How would you, in your case, approach this issue of solidarity and that issue with the investment?
So there are different models. When it comes to our energy community or energiaühistu, then I know that there is a quite large part of members who are able to invest even to local projects and are interested to do that. So this is one of the reasons that they are on board. Talking about the locals, then yes, the locals might not have the funding and they might be looking for a bank loan because necessarily they always don't want someone, let's say a third party, being a part of their project. And from the bank, you can get the really good loan in Estonia for all kinds of renewable energy projects. And then there is the third option, which is if we're talking about wind or hybrid park developers, they are willing to have a contribution to the local community members. So how it goes is that they are doing the project. They are doing the project anyways, the development. And if the development, the development is millions and millions of euros. So it doesn't matter to them if the locals are on board or not financially. But what they can do is onboard the locals before the planning process, and give them opportunity to be a part of the consortium that puts their time into planning, puts their time into talking with the local government, and so on. And in exchange to that, there is this initiative in Estonia that you can offer virtual stocks. And so they're working with that. So basically, for the time contribution, they receive virtual stocks, which they can later turn into money, plus the local communities that are within the range of the development, they receive cheaper electricity. So it's more complex than that, but this is one way that it can be done. So 3 ways. Development projects, onboarding the locals. The second way is the locals doing it by themselves, maybe getting some help from Energiaühistu or the umbrella organization who might have the funding. And the third option is for Energiaühistu to go and do something somewhere and then give a small patch to the locals, but keep the main investment for themselves. And through that, they can offer better fixed pricing for the electricity for the locals. I hope that was clear.
Yes, very much. And you mentioned now at the very end, a very striking, and one of the key points, of course, is the provision of fixed, stable energy prices. I think within a greater landscape of very fluctuating energy prices, as we've seen the last couple of months and years, I think the narrative around energy communities, so either by providing, potentially being able to provide a more stable kind of market independent price to the end consumer, or by providing lower energy costs via innovative models such as energy sharing, collective self-consumption, energy communities can be a way indeed to provide a price of energy, of electricity, in a way that is less dependent on market fluctuations. Now, of course, this is very much dependent on the regulatory conditions that an energy community finds itself in. The picture is always not so easy, but nonetheless, this is one of the ambitions, and also this includes the kind of solidarity element as well, because ultimately we're trying to not only increase dividends for investors, but we're trying also, like you said, to have this more kind of societal benefit to do this cost reduction, etc. So solidarity is a very important point here. But also you mentioned procedural justice, right? So the participation in kind of more planning schemes. I think this goes a little bit beyond energy communities. It touches on generally how local communities want to be participating in these kind of processes. And I think the element of procedural justice also being part of energy citizenship, right?
I actually have 2 more quick points.
Sure.
To clarify the situation that we have. First is that the main energy provider in Estonia and the grid provider, both are public companies. So they are state-owned companies. And the grid is owned by one company all across Estonia, as also as the energy that, I don't know the percentage, it's probably close to 80% of the whole electricity locally comes from one provider, which is a state company. And on the other hand, the other issue that we have to tackle in Estonia is energy security, I think all across Europe, especially knowing that locally we cannot produce all the electricity that we need for the year. So we are, our energy prices are one of the highest in Europe currently. And because a lot of the energy used to come from our eastern neighbors. And then there is the Nord Pool, and we are quite much dependent on the Nord Pool providers' pricing.
So, of course, I mean, then your activities there directly contribute to that energy security, but also your efforts, I suppose, would also be geared then at ensuring this level playing field for energy communities in terms of grid access. So
yeah,
that also depends very much on the national, regulatory framework and how the kind of ownership of the respective grids at different voltage levels is kind of managed. So very important that you mentioned that, because of course energy citizenship needs to be enabled, and that includes grid elements. Maybe just reminding everyone that we have the opportunity. Well, I was just about to remind everyone, but people are already reminding themselves and are writing in the chat for questions. So thanks a lot for that. We'll be taking those up in a few minutes. Maybe Roland, going back to you now. I mean, you've heard a lot about solidarity, procedural participation. Now the grid element was mentioned. But maybe let's kind of roll back just a second, come back to the element of kind of direct support to citizens in a very practical manner. Patrick touched a little bit on, or quite a lot actually, on the role of local government. Of course, many local governments in Europe are now increasingly interested in creating like one-stop shops for energy communities, where citizens can just go and ask, well, how do I actually do it, right? I mean, if I understand you correctly, this is what you are doing. Could you maybe, in a very practical manner, walk us through how does your day-to-day work? So somebody approaches you, comes to your office, and tells you, I have a solar panel, I want to share it, or I want to be connected somewhere. Maybe just kind of walk us through that exact process.
Yeah, our main target group are the local municipalities. So usually they address us, they come to us and say, I would like to establish a kind of a renewable energy community within my town, within my village. Then we hand over all the necessary contractual framework, the platform for registration to them. Then there are some information meetings with the citizens where we inform them about the possibilities of an energy community, about the hard facts. Then people register. Then we do a kind of simulation of this future energy community based on the load profiles of the citizens. So they hand over also some information about the production capacities, about their consumption. Then we know already if this energy community is feasible from an economical point of view and from a technical point of view. Then we register all these participants to the grid operator, hand them over all the necessary contracts. They sign them via mobile phone, and afterwards they receive the bills from the energy communities. We have also a kind of dialogue function. So in case there are some discussions within the energy communities that they can't handle themselves, then it's also possible that we have a kind of mediation function there.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Yeah, please.
We heard also a little bit about energy poverty and the target participants in energy communities. We were quite surprised because when we started the initiative, we thought that maybe young families, poor families will be very interested in this type of energy communities. But what we see is that we have a lot of quite wealthy participants of middle ages, so not the very young people, not the Fridays for Future people. And from the countryside. So we have almost no participants from bigger cities. And therefore, we identified this now also as one of the target groups for the future. And we need also some kind of special programs, some special initiatives for them.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. That's the end. I mean, everything was very important, but at the end it was a very striking reminder, or really a message about where all of this could and should be heading, partially also because ultimately I think energy communities and the element of energy sharing was also introduced to basically satisfy the argument that well, we have so many roofs that are suitable for PV panels in the cities. Why not use them? And I think that's definitely something that needs to be worked on a bit more. But indeed, as you said, I mean, you're providing these holistic services. I think that's a very strong message here, that you're able to deliver on that and kind of act also as the social kind of mediator and dialogue provider. I think that's also very important because there's that governance side to enabling the energy citizenship as well. Then, since you stopped on a point on local governments and cities, let me go quickly back to Patrick. Patrick, you now have the lovely honor of taking on the first audience question. There's a question from Bob. I think that's quite interesting. The question is, do we see the grid operator and provider more as a barrier or accelerator of energy communities? A very complex question, and a question that depends again on the regulatory conditions of the respective state and region. But of course, in Italy now we have some new provisions around energy sharing and all of that, where of course the kind of regulatory authorities are very much involved and have a strong role to play. But maybe you can shed some light on that question from the Italian context, the Roman context.
Oh, very hard question. Well, no, I'm not. I mean, I'm joking. It's something that I think that the opportunity to follow the process, the long process from the European Directive on Energy Community to the different laws and implementation in the states, knows that it was a very hard struggle, because the energy community and the sharing of energy at local level, it's a revolutionary approach that is changing and will change more and more the energy market. And of course, the DSO, the operator, the providers knows they know exactly that this could be, in some sense, from their part, a little bit not stopped, but anyway, they create some barriers. This is very clear. In Italy, this is very evident, and also the recent law about the energy community is an evidence of this let's say opposition, because in my opinion it's a concrete opposition. I mean, it's also very clear to understand, of course, because for them it's a matter of business. From one side we have the state that would give incentives, and this is public money, of course, for the sharing part of the energy. I mean, of the exceedance energy of the PV plants. On the other side, there will be the need of a lot of investment in the infrastructure from the operator. Well, in Italy, the main operator is Enel, and the group is Enel and Endesa, the same in Spain. This distributed generation model that will be implemented, also grace to the renewable energy community, means that the infrastructure has to be renewed and requalified, and this investment will be quite low. For example, just an example to understand how this will this kind of aspects are impacting also in the implementation of renewable energy community. The main public incentives that will arrive, it's not yet ready, for the renewable energy community will be for the smaller municipality. So not the cities, not the medium municipality, but municipality with less than 5,000 inhabitants. Why this? Because this is the preference of the operators. Actually, for them, bringing more and more energy, power, electricity in these areas is very expensive. That's why they prefer that the distributed generation could start in this peripheral area or very rural area. Actually, if you think that okay, this could work, it makes sense, let's say. But on the other side, it is discriminatory for all those very large sector of people and citizens that lives in urban areas that will not have this 40% of the investment cost paid by the state. This is the incentive that will be granted to the rural area. Well, the situation is much more complicated because there are a quite complex calculation of the incentives. The other part of the incentive is the incentive that is in the form of the feed-in tariff for the shared energy. This is, of course, it is an incentive that is granted to everyone, not depending on geography, of course. But as you can imagine, this is a feed-in tariff. This means that you need anyway an investment at the beginning, and then we will have a specific payback time of your investment with this kind of incentive. So there are two different kind of incentives. One is a front-end incentives on 40% of the cost, and the other will be for everyone a feed-in tariff on the shared part of the energy. Well, of course, on the other hand, Arthur, I think it's important to highlight the fact that this model of energy transition, I personally don't think that there is only one model of energy transition. There is a need of much more discussion about this. But let's say the main model of energy transition that will be implemented in the very next period in Europe and in Italy is the shift from the shift to electricity. Let's say that the shift, for example, also of thermal energy to electricity with the pumps and other kind of transformation. But this will result in a serious increase of the electricity demand. This is the other aspect of the balance. From one side, the renewable energy communities are in some sense in competition with the operators, because it means that locally you can create your energy, and actually we will buy less energy from the main operators. But on the other side, the general level of the demand in electricity will increase in a very fast way. This is another complex challenge to deal with.
Thanks a lot. You're painting a very broad picture here. I think that is very, very insightful. And in the end, I mean, indeed, that there will be a need for a discussion involving a lot of different stakeholders, potentially a lot of different models. And we also see that with regard to the discussion on energy communities. I mean, how there are different models that are developing, different kind of activities that are developing, depending on kind of the view, the dominant views kind of in the respective states and regions. So that's very much to be taken into account. I see already that Joseph, you have responded to the questions in chat. Thanks a lot for that. Indeed, what you said regarding the point on the national kind of grid operator, that there's two sides to that, right? So on one hand, people would need to kind of go through the national grid when sharing or producing energy, and on the other hand, of course, you have only one partner to talk to. So I think that is an interesting dynamic. Actually, I would like to very briefly stay on this point of the grid elements, because one of the specific recommendations from EC Square was, we need more tools to provide the kind of just peer-to-peer energy trading. We need software. We need toolboxes to actually allow that. Now, of course, Energie Zukunft, you are doing that. Specifically in Austria, to my understanding, of course, the DSO and kind of situation is also quite complex, similar to what we have in Germany here. In Germany, I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with a regional DSO who was telling how extremely complex it is for the DSO to actually facilitate energy sharing or like collective self-consumption, even within the same building, the same apartment building. How do you see that? How do you, the tools and the softwares that you offer to facilitate these activities of energy communities, how do they relate to the broader picture of how DSOs have to now by law facilitate energy communities in Austria?
Yeah, first we have to understand that the system or the distribution system as we have it now is a product of the 1940s, 1950s. When you have a car, you would say it's a classical car and it's very nice. For an electronic for an electric distribution system, that's maybe not the case. So we have a lack of digitalization here. We don't know the exact data, consumption data, production data. And although many households, or most of the households, already have smart meters, this smart meter data will be not sufficient for the tasks in the future. So European Commission states clearly that energy communities will offer also some flexibility services. For doing so, you will need data that is close to real time, high quality data, and also in Austria currently we don't have it. So there are some additional devices that you can link to your smart meter to get better data, faster data that is more close to real time. But it's still a long way to go to have these flexibility services, storage services within the energy community. And it will be, at the end of the day, also a kind of regulatory problem. In Austria, we have a support scheme that provides lower grid tariffs if you consume electricity from renewable energy communities. At the end of the day, this will reduce the income for the DSO and TSO. And somehow the regulator will have to take care about this. So this will be definitely a problem that is knocking on our door.
Thanks a lot. And it's going to be very exciting to see how you tackle this problem that's going to be knocking at your door, I think, here. Great. I think gradually we're coming towards the end of this very interesting discussion. I think I like very much how we're covering, a lot of elements regarding the governance and the member participation, but also the regulatory frameworks, the challenges and solutions here. I mean, there's an increasing amount of solutions around energy communities as opposed to just challenges. I think the situation is slowly but surely improving a little bit. I would actually like to kind of finish on a more community kind of focused element. Actually, I would like to build on the question from the chat from Johanna, which I see, Josep, you've already responded in writing. Thanks a lot for that. But since I can't moderate and read at the same time, I would ask you nonetheless to kind of explain us a little bit, give us some insights on the ways you're engaging the community through communications and kind of outreach campaigns in your case.
So, yeah, I'll basically elaborate on what I wrote. We are planning 17 workshops this year in local governments and communities, because I think this is the best outreach, the best way to get in touch with the demographics that would be interested. And we're trying to kind of get the flame up with them, and then if they want to do something, then we have the means to support them in bureaucracy processes and also technically. So this is one way to do it. In terms of promoting it to the lawmakers, then we have several initiatives in Estonia. So at the moment, I'm trying to set up let's say an energy co-op coalition. I don't know actually what we're going to call it yet, with parties from different government organizations and also activists and professionals from the energy community to have this kind of a group of people who have good political capital and who will be heard. Because the fact with politicians at the moment is that they are interested in the topic, but they don't understand it. What they don't understand, they are not implementing, because it's too complex for them. There are some bright stars who understand, but it's not enough to get leverage. And in the long run, if we want energy communities to develop in Estonia, then we really need to change the energy. What's it called now? Electricity market law. Yeah. So Yeah, we have co-ops already. We're part of different parliament work groups for energy, for renewable energy, and so on. And also we have this Estonian Energy Co-op roundtable with, I think, 100 members as well. Together with the climate ministry, we are writing the energy market development plan for 2035 currently. So a lot is going on. A lot is going on. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, and I think we see here kind of different levels of communication. I think ultimately, you know, regardless of whether this is about communicating towards citizens who would like to be part of an energy community, or whether it's communicating to policymakers who have to actually make the policy that enables energy communities, in the end, a lot of this is about communicating things in a way that is understandable. I think there is a lot of things that have happened around energy communities, and I think it's helped sometimes to remind ourselves that the basic premise of energy communities, at least from my perspective, is simple. You know, it's about people sharing energy, it's about people creating local value through energy communities, and of course there's all this complexity that needs to be managed and orientated. And of course we've got all of you here today who are important stakeholders in guiding us, I suppose, through this complexity. But ultimately, I think the basic premise is relatively simple and has a lot of and that's what makes this concept so attractive. It has the potential to involve a lot of people because the basic messaging, the basic narrative is very, very appealing. So I think we can round up the discussion here. I'm not going to summarize it all again. I think it was relatively clear.
I'll just show you a picture of the events. So, which shows that this is a really badly drawn Estonian map by me, but all the bright colored dots are events that we are doing this year. So it's really across the country to get the reach. Just for illustration, sorry.
No, it's nice. It's good, a nicely drawn illustration indeed, and good to get the overview of that is happening in multiple areas. So indeed, I think at this point I would like to thank very much the panelists, Josep, Roland, and Patrick, for your great contributions. It was great discussing with you. Thanks a lot for the audience who has participated actively in the chat. It's been great that we've been able to incorporate this, I think, and have multiple views and questions answered here. I think with a view to the colleagues from EC Square, I think your policy brief has definitely been reality checked. I think we most of the elements that we've touched on would underline the recommendations in the brief. It's a very complex discussion, but I think this was very good that we had it. So with that having said, we have finished on communication, outreach, and kind of empowerment on that narrative. That will be, of course, the theme of the rest of the day. So yeah, thanks a lot again to all panelists and everyone who participated, and I look forward to the rest of the day. Thanks a lot. Back to you.
So, Fleur, the floor is yours.
Yes, many thanks, Benedetta. And I'm very happy to be here today. So yes, as a researcher, I am involved in the EC Squared project, in which I'm involved in the work package 4. That's on the psychological perspective on involvement in energy communities and energy citizenship. Next slide, please. And in this work package, I'm engaging we're not only engaged with the University of Groningen, but also with the University of Leipzig and colleagues from the University of Graz. And we just finished our working package with 3 deliverables, on 2 on experimental studies on energy communities and energy citizenship, which I will present the main results of today, and 1 report on the correlational longitudinal field studies. And they can all be found on the website soon. Next slide, please. So Daniel already tapped into this trend of a sort of regime shift from a neoliberal to a citizen-focused regime, from a centralized to a decentralized regime, and as a result, the ideas that passive energy consumers transform into active energy citizens. But for this, we do not only need technological advancement, but also societal change, right? And without sort of the careful consideration of what actually motivates people, and also people with different backgrounds to participate in the energy transition. And when they participate in the energy transition, there's not only the risk that the energy transition is hampered, but also that we jeopardize the justice element of the energy transition. Next slide, please. So energy citizenship, just to recall, had the definition: people's beliefs that they as individuals and as collectives have rights and responsibilities for a just and sustainable energy transition. And importantly, from a psychological perspective, also their motivation to act upon these rights and responsibilities. And energy communities can be a way potentially to actively engage citizens to become energy citizens, and to motivate pro-environmental behavior more generally. Yet we also know that relatively a small amount of people is actually a member of an energy community in many European countries, and which was also already tapped into in the panel discussion, that energy communities seem to be led by sort of elite groups, sort of the usual suspects of wealthy, more highly educated men. And so the question is, how can energy communities be organized and set up to actually motivate people, and motivate people from different socio-demographic backgrounds to increase involvement and to become involved. And as was also already discussed, there are many types of energy communities in Europe, and depending on the local institutional framework or on the country level, energy communities can differ in many aspects, their economic characteristics, but also their social embeddedness in their locality. And so here I want to present the main setups that we found mattered most for motivating people to become involved in the energy transition. Next slide, please. So the results I'm presenting today are based on 10 experiments as part of this project, in which we surveyed people via the general population via panels. So it's not only on members of energy communities, but the broader public and how they perceive and support energy communities. And participants were presented with descriptions of different energy communities. So that's important, that these are hypothetical, fictitious energy communities that they received information on, and then they could make a decision or indicate whether they support these energy communities and their willingness to join these energy communities, and also their energy citizenship. Yeah, next slide. So these were the 6 key setups that we found to matter for people's motivation to support energy communities and become involved. Next slide, please. I will go through them one by one. So first of all, people were more willing to support state-funded energy communities, in which members were not required to make very high financial upfront investments. And the fact that energy communities are more likely to succeed may motivate people, as they have then the sufficient financial resources. Next slide, please. Also, the legal frameworks we found to be important. So energy communities overall were seen as more attractive if they were situated in countries or local areas where there were clear legal frameworks, and also when there were clear binding contracts within the energy communities between members. And yeah, in much more developed energy communities, this might be logical, but we also took more informal energy communities into account. But it seems that people do prefer that there is some kind of legal ground in the energy community. And yeah, thirdly, we saw that while municipalities are very important for helping energy communities to reach their sustainability goals, and this was also one of the recommendations of Policy Brief 5, of course. From a citizen perspective, actually we saw that there was higher support for energy communities that were either formed from the bottom up or in cooperation with the municipality. So yeah, it seems crucial for citizens to become involved, to have some kind of influence on the energy community and be involved in the organization. And this mainly was the case because it increased the perception that the energy initiative is able to contribute to sustainable energy transition, and importantly, that the initiative also represents the local community. Next slide, please. And we also saw this citizen involvement back into the fact that social embeddedness seemed to play an important role. So energy communities were seen as more attractive if members were interacting and spending time together, and when they were locally based. Next slide, please. And related to this, also the motives played an important role that energy communities had. So actually we found greater willingness to support energy communities which focus on environmental sustainability and social justice, and that relates to the fact that social interaction also was important for people, as opposed to more external aims such as financial benefits or energy security. And this is quite consistent with other psychological research on energy communities, that it's a sort of misperception that financial motives are the only motives that people have to become involved, and that actually these pro-environmental and social aspects of energy communities seem to be playing a key role for motivating people. And then last but not least, we also looked into the diversity and inclusion aspect of energy communities. And here we focused on gender, and we saw that women were overall less involved or willing to be involved in energy communities. And that's mainly because they felt less able and less represented by the members. And when including a message stating that energy or that diversity was valued by the energy community, or by including more pictures, for example, of women on the board of an energy community to people, this did not really change people's perception. So that was interesting. And it seems that there seem to be more structural barriers for some groups to be involved. So linking back to this financial motive, it might still be that there are important financial barriers for some groups to get involved, even if they want to. And overall, we saw that people were more willing to support more diverse energy communities. So to quickly conclude, I think the main take-home message here is that how energy communities are set up and organized is central to people's motivation to support them and to get involved, but also that it's impacting who is becoming involved and which socio-demographic groups. Of course, these findings are based on these experiments, and they need to be replicated before we can generalize these findings to other contexts. But overall, I think it gives nice first insights into the motivational aspects and setups of energy communities. Linking, providing a nice link also to the empowerment kits of Work Package 6 and how to actually become aware and create support for different types of citizens to become involved in energy communities. That was it. Thanks a lot. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks a lot, Fleur. We will also have 5 minutes of question and answer after Joanna's, also our next speaker, presentation. In the meantime, if you have questions, please feel free to write them in the chat. You will also, if you have questions coming up later on, I'm sorry, I have my camera off. Later on, you can reach out to us or to Fleur, and we will be happy to answer them. So I would then leave the floor to Joanna. Joanna is going to introduce us to the concept of gamification, empowerment, and inclusion in energy transition and energy communities. She's working on the school project, and thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you, Fleur, for the nice introduction. I find a lot of your points relevant to our work too. I will try to share my screen. I hope everything goes well. And if not, please feel free. Yeah, I'm not sure if I should. Yeah, you can see my screen now?
Yeah,
because
perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, if anything goes wrong, please speak out loud because I cannot see the chat anymore. This session is called Gamification, Inclusion and Empowerment in the Energy Transition, and I will talk a bit about what we are doing in our work package in RISCU. RISCU, first, I'm Ioanna. I work for the Center of Research and Technology, ELAS, in Thessaloniki, Greece, one of the 16 partners of RISCU from 7 countries. RISCU has 4 pilot energy communities, as you can see here in the map. And its main focus is to increase the active participation of communities in energy markets, enhancing and facilitating the management and trading of flexibility in cooperation with sectoral players. The social tools that are being used mainly in this project are gamification as well as intergenerational learning. We are mainly working on gamification. So just to have a common background on what gamification means, is the use of game design elements in non-game contexts to engage and motivate individuals, solve problems, improve user experiences, and drive desired behaviors. So you're probably familiar with some apps motivating you to drink water or exercising more. They are rewarding. They even create challenges. Another type of gamification strategy could be an art contest. These are all common tools that we've already seen in the energy efficiency, energy saving, or behavior change in the clean energy transition field. And this, the difference between gamification and serious games. Serious games are games, so they have the term serious games means that they are mainly designed with the primary purpose of providing an engaging, enjoyable context in which users can learn, practice, and master educational, professional, or problem-solving content. Here we can see different types of serious games, digital ones or board games. These two are actually focused on energy community. All of these are focused on energy communities. The results of previous projects. Why should we use gamification or serious games in our work with energy communities? Gamification has been proven to promote recall and understanding more than traditional learning methods or cultivate higher order thinking in Bloom's taxonomy. This means analyzing, evaluating, and creating. And it can offer design experiences, which means it can enable players to learn by actively engaging in activities. It can also facilitate the retention and transfer of practical skills and also accommodate different learning styles because it allows participants to absorb information through visual, auditory, and hands-on experiences. Inclusion in as we define it is when all people are valued and they are able to participate and contribute to their fullest without any discrimination based on their gender, sexual orientation, social class, political beliefs, race, ethnicity, nationality, religion, age, and or disability. This definition also comes from the recent report by the Scale 3050 project, which released an inclusion guidelines, which are also super relevant to what we're discussing today. Okay, so it's not. This is where I want to highlight that we're not only talking about representation, but also active participation. So we're not only talking about equal numbers of people from different social groups, but also probably of transforming our processes and structures so that they are actually inclusive and supportive. The inclusion issues we found out that are commonly found in energy communities, and they were also mentioned during the panel discussion today. The first two is that there is no available investment capital or loan accessibility for a lot of people. And probably there are also time constraints depending on their background, daily life, work-life balance, etc. But the two that we believe that we can that we can improve by applying gamification in our work with energy communities are the biases that come from homogeneous groups. So having the homogeneity within groups may impact decision making and inclusivity and create this loop of non-inclusion. And also the knowledge gap, the knowledge and understanding gap, which also affects communication and collaboration. And how can games support this, to support our effort to improve inclusion? They can break the barrier of knowledge through fun and challenge stereotypes around science and technology. So it's not anymore something serious that people who already have the information can deal with, but it's something that we can all be involved in. We could also use role-playing, a strategy that was used also with schools in our project, so that we can relate with different experiences and points of view. It can encourage social interactions, bridge the intergenerational gap, because we need youth in this transition. It can empower through rewarding, support community building, and simulate real-life decision-making processes, which we know is a vital aspect of the participation in an energy community. To ensure the inclusion of different points of view, as well as increase the impact of our gamified strategies and games, we decided to adopt a co-design methodology, basically an iterative collaborative method, where in each step we included different stakeholders depending on their expertise or opinions and experiences. We also created a template to support the first initial inspirational phase for the creation of games and gamified strategies. This is all going to be available through our upcoming deliverable, which will be published soon, number D2.2. So we will be happy to share it also with you. And our idea, our first idea, because we're also developing other tools in Reschool, was to create a top trumps card deck. I don't know if you're familiar with this type of deck. I've been playing it a lot when I was younger, and it seems that young people are still playing that game. It's a classic card game. It features themed decks of cards. Here we can see scientists, dogs, and cars. And each one highlights different items or character related to a specific topic and different attributes. So, for example, we can see in the dog one that it compares the size, the rarity, the good temper of dogs. And so we decided to create such a deck for energy communities. We followed the co-design process. So in the beginning, we included the energy community members as well as experts from our consortium to identify the right attributes that describe the energy communities. There we found out how important communities think that the social aspects are. So we decided not to include only technological aspects, for example, the installed capacity, but also social aspects like gender diversity or energy poverty support. We then invited the school students to co-create images for our deck based on generative AI tools. This means that they came in contact with the concept of energy communities, and they created prompts that they feel were relevant for each energy community. We then had another co-design session with AI and game design experts, deciding on the final layout, as well as accuracy and attractiveness. And we also discussed about different gameplays, because traditional gameplay is comparing the different attributes between two cards, and the best one wins. So we also discussed about potentially different gameplays, more collaborative, or more complex, or more complex, that are more attractive. So this is the end of our first iterative process. This is the outcome. These are the 4 energy communities participating in a reschool. As I said, the images are created by AI, and the data we collected from our energy communities. We also created a survey to that we shared with other energy communities, because we are trying to complete the deck with 32 cards. And I will also put this link in the chat. So if there are any members of energy community here, or people that are related with energy communities and they feel like it's a good idea to share it with them, please help us complete our deck of cards. We can see that the final attributes that we have at this round is founding year, number of members, gender diversity ratio, and energy poverty support ratio, active participation, meaning the percentage of people participating in the last General Assembly, and the total installed capacity. These are going to be the input for the second iteration, where we will try to improve these elements and assess their impact. So just to have a brief overview, when the players play the cards, they will be able then to identify and categorize the diverse fields of activity within energy communities. They will gain an understanding of the equity and participation aspects within energy communities. They could differentiate and classify various types of renewable energy sources, and acquire the ability to recall and locate the names and cities of different energy communities. And where could we use this game? We could use it in secondary education, of course, to start talking about the energy communities, but we could also use it in the facilitation of meetings. For example, in a workshop we are having with interested people, we can start with a game like this, which could be ice-breaking or energizing. We could also use it at a family night to discuss about energy communities, and of course as a dissemination tool to spread the word about energy communities in exhibitions or multiplier events. Yeah, that was all for me.
Thank you a lot, Joanna. And the cards look great. It's also nice to learn more about how AI and technologies in general can contribute to it, and like to increase, to play a game, let's say. This is a really good also link to our next activity. I will leave the floor to my colleague Laura. She will introduce an empowerment kit that we developed. So I actually imagined using this kit right after using the tool presented right now by Joanna. Laura, to you. Thanks.
Thank you. I will share again my screen. Okay, so as Benedetta, my colleague, just explained, we developed an energy citizenship empowerment kit. So this is a toolkit to support energy citizenship through it. It's a gamified tool, let's say, that has that is supposed to support brainstorming and energy planning activities. And it is now available both in digital formats and in printable PDF version. So you can find it on the website. I don't know if maybe Benedetta can share the link in the chat. And so the objectives of this kit are to promote inclusion and justice in the energy system, and also raise awareness about different issues, barriers, and also enablers and possible solutions in the energy system, and as well provide a methodology for energy leaders or planners or policymakers to make these energy communities more inclusive, and of course to facilitate the identification of not only barriers but also solutions. I will just briefly explain how the kit works. We don't have enough time now to go in detail, and later on we will divide in breakout sessions so that we can try to have a look at the tool more in detail and try to see some of the questions. But basically, the first step would be to read the instructions and the glossary. We made this with a sort of infographic style so that they are very easy to read and understand. And we also made a glossary with some technical words or some very specific terms that maybe the audience or the users of the toolkit might not be familiar with. After that, our suggestion is to start and allow a first round of discussion to try to see if the participants and the users of the kit are familiar with their context, they know about the energy communities and the energy system in general in their context.
Laura, we can't hear you.
And that can help the facilitator to understand what is the feeling of the participants and to guide better the rest of the discussion. Then the next step would be to choose a deck of cards. So we have 4 different color-coded deck of cards, and each of them focuses on a demographic factor. So we have gender, ethnic minority, housing, and socioeconomic background. But at the same time, we have 5 different dimensions that we try to go more in detail with the questions. So this toolkit can be used both horizontally and vertically, let's say, so focusing on one demographic factor or on one dimension, which could be, for example, empowerment or economic dimension or legal dimension or knowledge and skills or also participation. We try to make this as flexible as possible so that different groups can decide if to use all the deck of cards or focus on one or multiple factors or one or multiple dimensions. And in the slide, you see a sort of organization that we made for one of our testing of the kit. So to have all of the cards together and then let the users choose if to concentrate on horizontally, let's say, or vertically, and this is one possible solution for an online version of this, of the use of this kit. And then we also have a deck of cards with good practices, so with examples from the energy sector or also outside the energy sector that are connected to some of the questions of the decks, so that users can have a discussion and maybe link the good practices with the questions to try to have an inspiration and spark more the discussion. And just to close, who is this kit for? So we imagine this kit to be used by a small group, let's say 5, 10, 15 people. And this is mostly made for policymakers or energy planners and energy practitioners, or also community energy initiatives representatives, but as well citizens or representatives from marginalized groups that are involved in the creation of energy communities. So with this is because we have some very specific questions for the context in which the energy community is or the initiative is being planned. So of course, we imagine people really involved in the project using this kit and trying to work on the inclusivity and the empowerment of the group. So thank you. This was a very brief description. If you have any question, of course, you're welcome to ask.